Welcome back to another podcast. I am Pastor Jared, and with me today is Brian Fairchild. He is a computer programmer and my brother-in-law, and pretty much everybody's tech guy that knows him. He's our go-to. And I asked you here today, Brian, I asked you to join us, not just because you're technology, but also because you are pretty much you pretty well keep yourself up to speed on current events and things going on, and then from a tech standpoint, I kind of wanted to see some of your opinions on where you think things might be going to or should be going to. So is there anything you'd say hi to the people?
Hi, people.
All right, that's to both of you watching. Well, I guess let's just dive right in and see where we get to.
All right.
I wanted to start because we are seeing, a lot of isolation, a lot of stay home and things like that. So technology is becoming a pretty big thing right now, even more so than it was before. But particularly what I'm seeing, and because I'm in the arena, is in ministry. So why do you think it's important to use technology in ministry?
So what I would say is that we need to use whatever the current means of communication is. A few years ago, it was TV and it was radio, and pastors use those mediums to reach outside of their four walls. And today, the main means of communication is the internet, and so I think we need to use the different mediums on the internet to reach a wider audience. I think you also need to use technology to reach younger people. And I'm not talking about gimmicky, but, the kids, my daughters, your boys, they use their phones. They use them to communicate with their friends. They use them for school. They use them for entertainment. They use them to watch movies, to watch all the stuff on all the social media videos and all that sort of thing. They know that, and if you can put something in front of them that's good, and hopefully replace some of that time on stuff that you don't want them to see, then that's another pipeline, another avenue that we can use to reach kids.
I agree with that. I do think, you see it in a lot of younger people. They would rather use different apps and forms of internet and stuff like that, also than to use the phone. I mean, I never talk to my kids on the phone; they text me.
Right. In the same house.
Yes, yeah, from the same room a lot of times. I'm probably going to end up coming and wrapping back to something because I had a question, I forgot it, but we'll move forward for now and we'll see if it comes back.
All right.
I did want to make one point and just hit on it again, but you are talking about how our kids' generation is on their devices and very plugged in, and I agree, and I think that if we refuse to adopt what they're into, then I think we're really just going to lose them. We are losing them. I mean, it's been shown that the young people are not engaged in churches and are leaving churches as soon as they get a chance. And I think that the fact that we don't come to the platforms that they use is part of it. But I think there's a lot of other contributing factors as well. So what types of technologies are available, and which ones do you think would be useful for churches to use?
So probably the main artery, if you could call it that, would be the social media networks. And there's a bunch of them out there: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, in a sense. These apps, they engage by means of a stream of information. And if you can use that stream to plug in positive messages, messages about Christ, that will stick with them at some point. You may not think it is, but when they start seeing these positive messages roll through, or Bible verses, or whatever it is, affirmations about them, giving some positive feedback, that will stick in with them. Otherwise, they're just going to see all of the filth and the garbage that comes across from their friends, or even from people they don't know.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest thing, because they're on those networks all the time. The second thing I would say is streaming, and streaming comes in many different platforms. A lot of the social networks actually do a lot of streaming nowadays. So, like these little videos that you're doing, longer form videos like Bible studies, devotions, even services. A kid they have this tendency to want to watch something in that smaller, form, and something that they can hold in their hand or they can hold in their lap, they can sit in the room and watch and listen to. It's something that does engage them. And there's all these different platforms we can use. Facebook live streaming, YouTube has live streaming. You can use Twitter has there's a tool called Periscope where you can do live streaming through Twitter. There's Vimeo live stream. There's a whole bunch that are available. And a lot of these streaming systems, these streaming platforms, they also kind of act as an archive for your stuff, right? So when you do live streaming, it's going to record it and it's going to live out in the cloud indefinitely. And so not only are you engaging with somebody one-on-one right now, but then, further down your timeline, they may see it a week from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now, something that engages them and touches on some hot point that makes sense to them, that connects with them.
So your Sunday morning service is no longer just stuck with Sunday morning, because it's going to keep showing up. Right.
And people can go back and listen to it over and over again. It's there indefinitely. And, we've tried in the church to do things like CDs or radio broadcasts or stuff like that. But I mean, the streaming and the archiving platforms that are out there today do so much a better job than what we've ever done before.
Well, and like you were saying also, when you have the CDs, and I can remember recording them on cassette tapes because we're that old. But when you have those and you can hand them out to your congregation and such, that's awesome. But that individual still has to be intentional about getting it and putting it in the player and taking aside that time to listen to it. Whereas, you're streaming onto Facebook and stuff like that, and it just shows up in front of people. You don't have to be intentional to go look for it. You can, but if you're not, and you just happen to be scrolling by and, oh, hey, that looks interesting. And that's where I think a lot of the views happen today, right? I mean, that's where a lot of the viral videos start.
Yeah. In fact, there's, an old saying in advertising is there's no better advertising than the word of mouth. So if you can have your close network share it with their network, and they share it with their network, it just grows, and it grows exponentially. So this is something else that used to really, I think, was a struggle for the churches to get that exponential growth, because, like you said, if you had a CD or a tape, well, you might make a copy of it and give it to somebody, but then how easy is it for them to make a copy of it and give it to somebody? But with social media and streaming today, they can hit a button and they can put it directly on their timeline, so all of their friends see it, and all of a sudden you have this much wider reach than you've ever had before.
Yeah, people that you never even realized were going to see it, people you never even heard of,
right?
To the nth power down there with the potential of seeing it. Social media has become such a means of, or such a potential means of outreach. And I really think that people are kind of missing the opportunity there
Mhm.
because they're sharing cat videos and,
Right.
and memes, and but that's a whole nother podcast. uh, so let's see, and you've also got one thing that I also like with Facebook Live, and I don't know about the other ones because I'm not a real techie guy, but I know with Facebook Live, like if I like a church Facebook page and then they go live, if I'm not on my phone, it'll still tell me. So it draws my attention to it even when I'm not actively using the app. So I kind of
Yeah.
like that idea as well because that is, you still have to be intentional about opening it, but it's it's popping up. It's advertising essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's free advertising too, because they also have built in a subscription model, right? And it doesn't cost you anything as the producer. It doesn't cost them anything as a subscriber to get notified essentially whenever you do something intentional like that. You start a stream or you start a church service, and all of a sudden, boom, they're notified. And it's that level of notification is something that we're also missing, right? Because we've always just run church as, okay, these are our times, this is when we're going to be here, I hope you come, right?
Mhm.
But this is saying, hey, I've started, I'm ready to go, I have a message for you, and they can act on it right then.
And what
It's not something that they, that will pass them by,
mm,
especially if they're interested.
and whether you physically made it here or not, you can still participate.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is, and we'll actually talk about that a little bit more. But the whole concept about our society being much more mobile. We're not all working 9 to 5 jobs,
Yeah.
and we're a lot of times people are traveling, or they're off site, or out on. I work in the oil field services, and so some of these guys, they're out on a rig, for 24 hours straight. And when they get that break, they might not even make it into town, but they can probably pick up a phone or a tablet and jump online.
Hmm.
So that kind of outreach is really good too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because that's especially up here in Rio Dosa. That's one of the things that we've found is that there is no regular work schedule.
Right.
It's and you can't just say we're going to be here at this one time of the week and be here because half the town's working at that time of the week, and then it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what time it is. It doesn't matter if it's a Sunday morning or a Tuesday afternoon. Everybody's already committed, so it's another opportunity beyond just having more services, but also to have services available online so that you can go back and reference it. Uh, I definitely I definitely see some value there for sure. I want to go a little more into social media from a different standpoint. I mean, it's it seems to me that since this whole quarantine social distancing thing has started, social media has blown up almost as much as when it was when Facebook first got popular. I mean, people have started posting all about their meals and naps and everything again because they're bored. What do you see? Do you see it falling back off in the future again once we start to get busy again, or do you think it's going to last for a while?
Well, I think it probably depends. I think once people, um, well, two sides of it, right? Once the church figures out how to use it and use it well, then it will become more prominent in social media. And on the flip side of that, that'll make it more available to the people, and they'll know that it's there now. Instead of just missing a service and not ever garnering anything from that message, well, now they know they're going to broadcast on Sunday morning, but I have to work, so I can go back and look and watch the service Sunday afternoon. So I think it's probably going to pull back a little bit because obviously, we're still humans and we still need that human to human contact. and this is great. I can see you, 260 miles away, however far it is, but it doesn't replace me being in the same room with you.
Yeah, I agree.
There's
Absolutely.
there's that contact that we need as people, and during this time, this is a great supplement, but at some point we're going to need to get back in touch with each other.
I agree. Matter of fact, I have talked to people about this in the recent past myself. It seems like it just seems like society in general today, or at least Western society and social media society, has become very well. I'd say it seems like depression to me.
Mhm.
People are very ready to fight, very ready to disagree, and not just like, oh well, I disagree with you and we have different points, but like, I mean, just directly into calling names and throwing away friendships, and this entire overreaction that has become just natural for us. And I really think that a lot of that, I believe that a lot of that has to do with our lack of physical social interaction on a
Right.
regular basis. I think
Yep.
that there's a whole lot that you lose when you're reading comments online. You don't see facial expressions, you don't hear tone,
Mhm.
and you're just not in that close proximity to somebody. And while people feel like that is socializing, they're losing so much. And I think that the human body really needs and craves that actual in-person contact, and that we start to develop these depressive attributes because we don't get it. So I think that that's something that people need to hear is, yeah, social media is good and has and serves a purpose, but it is not life. It's
Right.
it's not everything. And I'm really hoping that after this time of isolation that everybody there that a lot of people are dealing with right now, that maybe they'll start to pick up on that and start to put it down a little more and get out one on one and actually, you know, look each other in the eyes and talk to each other. I
Mhm.
think that a whole lot of politeness will come back in the world when you're standing face to face with somebody and you might get punched because you say
Yeah.
something, because that's
Yeah.
something that people do now.
It's keyboard warriors are a, a, a great attribute, I guess, if you could call it that, of what that has become. Right. Social
Mm.
media gives you that anonymous culture, that anonymous feeling that makes you think I can say whatever I want because he's not going to do anything to me, or
Yeah.
my conflict stops at the keyboard, right? And so they go on and on and
Uh-huh.
on. And if they were standing face to face, I mean, you're a big guy, and if somebody were to say that, some of the stuff I've seen them say to you in person, I mean, it just wouldn't happen.
No, it
They
wouldn't.
wouldn't say that. And I think that you also do lack the what you were talking about, the facial expressions and seeing the emotion on people's face. You're reading into that what they're typing out. And with video, a little bit better, but still, I'm not seeing your hands. Your hands could be clenched right now because you're so mad at what I'm saying. But if we're standing face to face, we're sitting at a table together, or we're sitting on a pew together, I can see the emotion, I can see the hurt, I can see, the sorrow that you're going
Mhm.
through that you can't when you have this distance between us.
Well, what's the saying that 90% of what you say is not the words you say? It is body language and tone and all that. So yeah, I guess the point there is that um is that we need to be careful not to overcorrect to
Mhm.
using these technology platforms and forgetting the actual social interaction need. um
Right.
I saw Midland Church had it set up before all this started, where you are broadcasting the services, but you're doing it from a standpoint of inside a packed sanctuary, and
Right.
you're showing not only the pastor there talking, but you're showing the people that are interacting as well. And it's kind of my hope that if people will do it that way, on a large scale, that will kind of draw people in. They'll be like, this is great, and I love being able to watch online, but I want to be there.
Yeah.
There's something pulling at me that makes me want to actually be there when I can,
Right.
and that this is a backup for when I can't. That's
Yeah.
that's what I'd like people to
And,
take
and
from.
that's what it should be. And I mean, the stuff that you do online should be a draw to get somebody into the sanctuary, into the house of God, because there's nothing like it. I mean, it's great that you get to hear the message and you can see people worshiping and everything, but it's just not the same as being in that sanctuary at that moment, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
And so the way that we have arranged the cameras and the way that we produce the services, um, we try to we've got this rule that from the fourth pew up, you have a chance of being on the internet. From that point back, we don't show you, right? And so we also do things like we intentionally don't show people giving because that's a
yeah,
personal thing between you and
I agree.
God. We also don't show the altar call. We cut as soon as he transitions to the altar call because that's also a very personal moment between you and God. That's not to say if somebody breaks out worshiping God, we're going to cut from them. We don't.
Mhm.
If they're speaking in tongues, it's going on the internet if it's in the middle of service. But people know those rules kind of ahead of time, and so the ones that are comfortable with it, they'll go up to the front and they'll give testimony, and maybe they'll get slain in the spirit, speak in tongues, and that's great. That shows people that real raw emotion of the Holy Spirit and that
Mhm.
movement at that time. And hopefully that's drawing people in. But at the same time, we don't want to freak anybody out, make them feel uncomfortable in the sanctuary in that moment.
Mhm. So, have you seen? And I'm sure that you have in the first few moments of having the cameras up, but long term, because they've been up for a few months now, right?
Yep.
So in the long term, have you seen a residual hesitation from people because of the cameras, or do you think that they've just gotten to the point that they're just not thinking about it anymore?
I think they've just kind of blended in. We've also actually gone through and remounted them. Before we just had them on stands and kind of placed. Now we actually have the back one is suspended from the ceiling.
Mhm.
The side one is also suspended from the ceiling, but in a corner. And then the one in front is kind of tucked back away from it. So I think that people, they just kind of forget about them after a while.
So so the you're kind of dropping a tradition here in inviting the internet into the sanctuary and into your worship service,
Mhm.
but you don't feel like that's had a long-term inhibiting effect on the people in the sanctuary and on their worship.
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, we've, as a church, have grown, and we've had some members that we've picked up because they found us on Facebook, they found us on Google, and you've seen some of our videos and stuff have come in and have become members. So yeah, I think it can definitely be maybe it depends some on the preacher. Um, Pastor Hedrick, he didn't really change anything about him. Of course, he did some broadcasting when he was in Mississippi before he came here,
Mhm.
but there was really no change from before we did the broadcast until after. He's still preaching the same message the same way. And I think that does make a difference too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, because if it had inhibited him, if it had changed him some, then I could see it
Yeah.
filtering down. Um, so let's see, where do I want to go with this? So you said you picked up some people, and some people have come in and said because of uh, finding the finding the services online and stuff. So it really has surpassed gimmick mode at this point and really gotten into an actual means of, for lack of a better term, advertising.
Yeah. That is part of it. The other part, though, and we've just really kind of started talking about this, and before we had the isolation issue,
Mhm.
When somebody was sick, they would miss a service. Now, when somebody is sick, they can stream it live that morning.
Mhm.
And that is something we haven't had. Grandmother, who's in a nursing home now, she can't really get out all the time, doesn't feel like it, but she streams the services and
Mhm.
she's able to watch those and participate.
So have you implemented a program or a way of allowing those people to participate in the service, offer prayer requests, things like that? I mean, I know with a lot of live stream options, you can still comment, things like that. So have y'all
Mhm.
implemented a way to get those comments and things like that when appropriate into play in the service?
Um, we have a system kind of built in. It's still a little bit manual, but when I'm running the live stream, I'm also watching the comments. And if somebody does comment during service, then I will send it a text message to Sister Hedrick, who's sitting on the front row. And she always has a big notepad with her. And if it's something like a prayer request now or something, she'll write something on it and show him, so he can pull that in the service. I don't know that that's happened a whole lot, but we have talked about that, and I know it's happened at least once or twice.
But it is there. It's something that you guys have considered, and so that it's not, so that it is more than just watching on TV. You do actually have some opportunity to contribute and to be a part of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, I do. I've got some standard stuff that I will comment during it. So I do, tell people if they have a need and they want to pray for us I tell them they can send a direct message. That way they'll feel a little bit more free about what they're saying. Some people are very reserved about typing into a comment during a live stream, a very personal request. But some people do, some people, especially if they know Pastor Hedrick, they may say, this is the issue. Can you pray for me? Others, they'll send a message either during service or after service, directly to him so that he can communicate with them directly. That has happened a couple of times.
Um, all right, so we've pretty well covered your personal uh, experience with technology and the way that you've implemented it out in Midland. And we've seen a lot of churches and pastors, not just in the Church of God, but just in general. I know that several of the pastors here in town um, that I've become friends with, they've all started doing online services, be it live or recorded, one of the two. Um, I was going somewhere with this. I'll find it in a second. I guess the thing is, your feeling is that even though we're doing it in response to a need now because people can't come to the church,
Mhm.
your feeling is that when this is over, we need to continue and keep that integrated into our regular church services for because it's going to reach people that won't come and visit on their own, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, well, this was kind of an occurrence before we started doing the streaming, but we have for several years have taken the kind of the core message of a service, and we posted a little image first about it. We've always tried to do that on Sundays and on Wednesday services. We also put out information about events that are going on and stuff like that. We had in the oil field, as you know, we've got people that are in and out all the time. We had a couple move in from Tennessee, and they had tried a couple of churches in the area, and they found us on Facebook, and they came for probably close to a year before they got transferred to the DFW area. But that was a direct result of us being present on social media, that they might not have found us if we weren't. So I definitely think that it's important that we we maintain this afterward so we can keep pulling people in. Before we started doing a lot of the streaming and stuff like that, we had about 100 likes, and I'm going to use Facebook for example. We had about 100 likes on our Facebook page, right? So that means every time we posted something, 100 people would see it in their stream.
Mhm.
And now I think we're probably closer to, well, I know we're over 300. We may be closer to 325. And it's not just in Midland, and it's not just in Texas, but also Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, Chicago, all over. We're starting to pick up people now. And those are important lifelines that I think we can keep building on as we go forward.
So the genie's out of the bottle, and we don't need to try to put him back in.
We still need to, the whole point needs to be to draw people into Christ, definitely. And it doesn't need to be gimmicky, but it needs to be intentional. It's we need to, as a church, really think about what we're doing and make sure that the words that we're using and what we're saying are appropriate and they're poignant, and that they are opening those doors instead of closing them. But yeah, I think the genie's out of the bottle, and we need to keep pushing forward with it.
So for Midland, it sounds like this is going to be a long-term thing. It started before the lockdown anyway.
Yeah.
And I think we both agree that it should be the new normal. But do you think it will be? Looking into the future, I mean, look at the last week or two. I mean, churches all over the place have been going live and posting their sermons and so forth in response to this. But do you think that there will be follow through after it's over, or do you think it's going to fizzle and that the churches are going to stop?
I mean, as far as our great commandment goes, I mean, I think that we would be fools not to use it going forward. If we do regress and we pull back and we don't put the effort in, then I really think we're doing a disservice to Christ in that respect. I think that it's a great opportunity, not just now during isolation. We've been in the house now for a couple of weeks, and we've only gone out a few times.
Mhm.
But we've talked to Pastor pretty much every day. He's had not just our Sunday services that we pre-recorded a couple of weeks ago, but he's also been doing some devotionals, and just keeping that lifeline going, keeping that interaction going.
Mhm.
And the hope is that when all of this is over and everybody comes back together, that we're going to pull more in with this. But going forward, we can't just stop. We've got to keep doing the things that we're doing, because we're making headway. We're making traction into a lost and dying world. And you want to talk about a lost and dying world, there's nothing more evident of that than the people that are on the internet. And we've got to reach them.
This is true. People are very transparent on social media.
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm going to throw you a curveball. This is the last thing I'm going to put you through. So what would you say to those who might say to you, or that you might hear indirectly, but those people with the attitude that Paul built his churches house to house and they grew that way, and that's the way we ought to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Any response to that? To that?
House to house is now screen to screen. I think that's the way we do it, is we go screen to screen, because that's people's portal into the world today, whether we like it or not. I'm literally sitting here at a desk, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens sitting on my desk right now.
I'm not even a tech guy, and I've got 2 screens and a phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, exactly.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that definitely we need to take the approach of, the technology wasn't available back then, but also there was a time when technology such as a book or binding wasn't available.
Mm-hmm.
The original were on scrolls, but when binding came out, that's what we went with. And so I think we need to keep moving the church forward with technology, knowing that it can't be a replacement for that true relationship, but it needs to be a draw.
Yeah, that it's a tool to be used in the process of drawing people in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the reason I throw that out is because I had somebody, kind of come to me with that, because we're, in case anybody doesn't know, we're planning a church out here in Rito, so we're starting from nothing, and that was given to me. Well, I think you should just do it like Paul did and go house to house and do it that way. Well, Paul didn't have advertising and technology available to him, and I really believe as zealous as Paul was, that he would have used that. I mean, he wrote letters and sent people thousands of miles to deliver them.
Absolutely.
And so I kind of feel that way as well, that Paul would have used this if he had had the opportunity, but would have used it appropriately. And I think that's the balance to find, is where is it useful and where is it becoming a replacement?
Right.
And do not let that happen.
Yep.
Well, Brian, I appreciate your time. Is there anything we missed that you want to add?
Mm. I really don't think so. I mean, I think it's more about helping people find that home church. I mean, you know what it's like to have a church that you've been involved in for so long. That becomes your extended family. And I think we need to use technology to help people find those home churches, even if they're remote.
I agree. Well, appreciate it. You've been very patient with me and my questions and stuff, and I can't think of anything else to ask. So I'm gonna thank you and let you go. Let you get back to your quarantine life.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. You have a good one.
All right, you too.